Is it recording? All set?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for joining us today for Small Farm Opportunities in Small Grains, Opportunities and Challenges of Small Grain Production. My name is Cheryl Burns. I'm the Project and Outreach Manager with Capital Resource Conservation and Development. I'll share a bit more about our organization in a moment, but I just wanted to state that the webinar is being recorded. The questions can be asked at any time, and we will address questions as well at the end. Capital RC&D is a nonprofit organization that works to conserve our natural resources and promote economic development. We primarily work in the 7-county region within South Central Pennsylvania, but often collaborate with other organizations, including other RC&D councils throughout the state. To learn which RC&D council fits your location, visit parcd.org. This marketing series specifically is a component of Capital RC&D's Local Food Initiative and is funded through partnership with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service in Pennsylvania and in collaboration with professionals and producers like Nigel, who have been very generous with their time and talent in agreeing to present through this series. You can find more about our programs, including additional local food support, high tunnel support, conservation marketing materials, and links to previous webinars under the Projects tab within the Capital RC&D website. And now, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Nigel Tudor of Weatherbury Farm to learn more about opportunities in small grains. Nigel?
Hello, my name is Nigel Tudor. My family runs Weatherbury Farm. It's myself, my mother, and my father. We've been doing farm vacations for 25 years, grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb for 9 years, and we've been growing certified organic grains for 8 years. And for almost 3 years now, we've been milling some of that grain into flour. So there's a lot of synergies here at Weatherbury Farm. So because of our hillsides, we have contour strips. Every other field is a hay field. So in between the crop fields, we have hay fields. And something has to eat that hay. So we have beef cows. They eat the hay. We give them the straw as bedding from our grain crops. And they make pack manure, which then becomes the fertilizer for our hay and grain fields. And of course, then we take the grain and we mill that into flour, or we sell it for making whiskey. These are the crops that we grow here at Weatherbury Farm. So in the fall, we plant soft white, hard red, hard white winter wheat, spelt and rye. In the spring, we plant hulless oats, open pollinated corn, and black turtle beans. Then midsummer, after some of our winter grains come off, and fields that will be followed next year in row crops, we'll plant buckwheat, which then we harvest in the fall. As we go through the different steps in growing grain, I'll talk about my choice in the equipment that I use. Keep in mind that the slopes of our hillsides and our heavy siltloam soils are a major factor in our equipment choice. So the first step is applying stacked age manure. And I'm using a Strautmann Universal Manure Spreader to do this. And we put about 9 cubic yards per acre. And how we choose this machine is originally we used to have a Stoltfus wet lime spreader that we would spread compost with. And it worked fine, but it was slow whenever the compost was dry. Whenever the compost became damp, it could be a real chore. So what I did is I went online and I found on YouTube, I did searches in German to try and figure out how the Europeans were spreading compost. And they were using these universal manure spreaders. And this is a phenomenal machine. It has a metering gate, then it has 2 milling augers, then it falls down into 2 giant spinners just like a lime or fertilizer spreader. It spreads the manure up to 80 feet wide. We do 50-foot pass to pass when we're spreading to get a uniform application. And if you're spreading pack manure, that's not completely broken down. Still, there's not anything bigger than a quarter lying on the field, so it's a pretty nice piece of machinery. So then the next step is, once we spread our manure, we have to prepare a seed bed. We do this by moldboard plowing. Here I'm using a Clover ES80 rollover plow with auto reset. Now, because of our hillsides, we plow uphill, so that means when we're plowing, we start at the top of the field and we work down. And the rollover plow is a real benefit to this type of operation, because at the end of the field, all we have to do is turn it over and go right back the way we came. The first plow we had was a Ford rollover plow. It was a backup to reset plow, which meant when the bottom's tripped, you had to set it down and back up. And we don't have that many stones, but we have enough stones that when we got in a really stony area, it could be a pain. So we got this Clover auto reset plow, and it does a really nice job. Once we've plowed, we finish our seed bed with a power harrow. Power harrow has tines that spin around, and it breaks down the soil much like a spike tooth harrow would. Now, the benefit of a power harrow is that it maintains the soil's natural aggregates. It breaks down the soil on the aggregate lines as if you took a chunk of soil in your hand and you just crushed it between your fingers. So unlike a disc, which the ground will be chunky and then you make another pass and it turns into dust, this leaves the aggregates in the soils, and we think that has a big benefit. The other thing too is, for us with our heavy soils, we have to make 3 disc passes. So if we're going 6 to 7 miles an hour with a disc and we make 3 passes, the power harrow takes the same amount of time, even though we're only moving at about 2 to 2.5 miles an hour, and it uses a lot less fuel. So that's why we've chosen to use this. Now, these Lely Rotera power harrows are available. They're stuck in fence rows, and you can get them pretty cheaply. So this is how we actually do it. I run the plowing tractor, and then my dad follows with the power harrow on the other tractor. Once we have plowed and power harrowed, then we spread lime and chicken manure. So we spread the lime. We aim to add 1 ton of calcium carbonate equivalent per year based on the soil test. Now, our soils have a large cation exchange capacity, so it takes many years to correct a calcium deficiency or remove the pH. Then we spread chicken manure on the surface. We apply it at about 2 to 4 cubic yards per acre. And the idea is that's going to be right up there on the surface and act as a starter fertilizer for our winter grains. So once we've spread our lime and chicken manure, then it's time to plant the grain. The machine that's on the back of that tractor is a Clover S-drill combination power harrow air drill. It has CX2 disc coulters on it. Now, we used to use an international 12-foot box drill, but if you do the math, you'll find out that actually with a box drill, 1/3 of the field is planted in wheel tracks, and for us, that never did as well as the stuff that was planted in virgin soil. The other advantage of this drill is we've moved from the 7-inch coulter spacing of our box drill to 5-inch coulter spacing. Plus, we can calibrate this drill so we can aim for a target population, which we normally do about 1.5 million seeds per acre. And we can make sure that that drill, that's what it's going to plant, because every year your grain will flow just a little bit differently. So if you go to the same setting, you're going to be planting a little bit different every year. So we can figure out exactly what we want to plant, and we can plant that with this. Whereas with the box drill, it was after the fact we found out how much we really planted. And here's some pictures illustrating. Now, the picture on the left, that's probably about the worst the box drill ever did, but it really emphasizes that was in the spring when it was a little bit damp, like it often is, and we planted our oats, and the oats that were planted in the wheel tracks just didn't do very good at all, if they even survived. Whereas this is the same field on the right, also planted in some damp conditions this last fall, and you can see with the new drill, there's a huge difference. And the difference is new drill actually has a big enough increase in yield that even though it was fairly expensive, it will pay for itself in about 2 years, sorry. So then in mid-March, we frost seed clover into our grain fields, winter grain fields. We're applying 8 to 12 pounds of red clover seed per acre. We inoculate the red clover seed. And the idea behind this is because clover is a legume, we're going to be growing our own nitrogen. And also, in the understory, the soil's bare, and something's going to grow there. So if we can get clover growing there, we're controlling what's growing there instead of weeds. And this is what the clover looks like in a wheat field right prior to harvest. This was Appalachian white this past year, right at the edge of the field. And you can see how nice the clover is in the understory there. And also, too, if you look at the grain, you can see the heads are what's called head bent, which is a sign that they're almost ready to harvest. So when you see the grains bend at the top like that, you want to start getting kernels out of the head and biting them between your teeth to try and figure out if they're ready to harvest. And once you think they're ready to harvest, take the combine a short way through the field, stop and get a moisture test to make sure that you're under 16% moisture. Also, too, I'd like to say that it's important to have varieties that mature at different times so that all your crops don't need to be harvested on the same day. With the raining weather that we have here in southwestern Pennsylvania, the harvest windows for premium grain quality may only be a couple of days. So here we're combining hulless oats with our Gleaner F2 combine. It has a side hill blower that helps to spread the grain evenly across the shoe on our hillsides, and that works very good for us. It's a good scale, it's easy machine to clean out, easy to maintain. A lot of the farms in our area also use John Deere side hill combines, but those combines are a good bit bigger, and they'd be hard to get purged between fields because sometimes we only have 4 acres of a crop, so we can't combine a whole acre just to use to purge the machine out between crops. And this is Swathing buckwheat. So this is a grain swather that we're using. In the header, it has draper belts, so once the grain is cut, the buckwheat in this case, the draper belts convey it gently to the center where it's placed in a windrow. The idea behind swathing is that if you have grains that are maturing unevenly, or you have some weeds pressure, you can't do too much weed pressure, you'll break the machine. I speak from experience there. Or like with the buckwheat, if we leave the buckwheat standing and try to get it to the point where we can direct combine it, we have found that the deer and wild turkeys will have harvested most of it for us at that point. Whereas if we swath it and we let it dry in the swath for about a week, we can come back and we can combine it and we get most of our yield without the wildlife eating it. Now I should caution that if you're using wheats or oats, you need to pick a window to swath when you aren't going to get rain, because the chaff or hull or husk around the grain on your wheat and the oats, if that gets wet, that will stain your grain, and that can also result in pre-harvest sprouting, so keep that in mind. I had to import this machine from North Dakota, so it's not something that's nearby in Pennsylvania, but you can find them. So this is combining with the pickup head on the combine. The pickup head is it's a rubber belt with teeth, but it works much like a pickup on a baler. It just picks the grain up off the ground, and it combines just like it normally would. And once again, this is something that you don't find in this area. I had to get this head out of Minnesota. Now this is Cultivating Row Crops. We use a International 78 mid-mount cultivator on an International 656 hydro tractor. And the reason we have chosen to use a mid-mount cultivator over a rear-mount cultivator is on our side hills, the tractors tend to crab a little bit. And then with a rear-mount cultivator, you'll start wiping out the rows, and as you correct, you'll actually wipe the rows out worse. Whereas with the mid-mount cultivator, pretty much if you're not driving over the crop, you're not wiping it out. And it also has the advantage that if you can see if any of the cultivators plug up, so you won't have a big long strip that got torn up because you didn't see the cultivator was plugged. Now this is some other organic weed control systems. I wish I had them, but I'm just not a big enough operation to justify their cost. The first thing is the Garford RoboCrop system. It's a side shift that uses an electric eye to see the row and recognize the row, and about 1,000 times a minute it'll make minor corrections to keep the cultivator right on the row. So this lets you run your cultivators really tight to your crop to do even better weed control than you could manually. And once again, like the mid-mount cultivator, if you're not driving over the crop, you're not going to be tearing it out either. These side shifts from Garford are also sold with Einbach cultivators and Colt cultivators. In the lower left-hand corner is the CTM crop surfer. In the U.S., dry bean producers build something kind of like this, like a hay mower or a lawn mower that'll go over their dry beans and mow the weeds down. And that's pretty much what this machine is, except it's something that's actually factory made. And in England, they're using this to control blackgrass and small grains or other weeds that come up above the weed canopy. So they'll combine it shortly before the grains mature, and then they can go back and combine and minimize the amount of green matter that's going through their combine. And lastly, in the lower right-hand corner is the organic weed pooler. It's just sets of hydraulically driven wheels that run right over the row, and they just grab the weeds and literally pull them up out of the soil. I have a friend out in Ohio that has one of these, and he really likes it. I will say that his soil is sandier than my soil. I'm not sure how well this would work in my soil, but it does work for him. So once we've harvested our grain, we need to dry our grain. So we're harvesting the grain ideally below 16% moisture. And if it is below 16% moisture, we will put it into a gravity box, and we'll put this red and white B&W screw and aerator in. And that just pulls air through the grain, and we use the ambient air to dry the grain. And that works very well for grain that's not too moist. Now, grain that's over 16% moisture or high value grain like our hulless oats, we put into the peanut wagon, which is on the left-hand picture, and that has a full aerated floor in it. And then we have a little axial fan on the back that we can blow air through that grain to get it dried down. And that works really well. It does have to be partially manually offloaded, so that's why we try and keep it just for really wet grain or high value grain. Also, too, these peanut wagons are available down south, but I have to caution you that they're only designed to hold 8,000 pounds of peanuts. So you can't fill them as full with grain because the grain weighs 60 pounds per bushel, whereas the peanuts weigh almost nothing. So we can only put about 18 inches of grain in this wagon, even though the sides are 4 foot high. So once our grain is dry, and before we can sell the grain, we need to clean the grain. So we use a Clipper 27 air screen cleaner. It has 2 screens in it. The way it works is the top screen is called the scalp screen, and that lets our grain commodity that we're cleaning fall through the screen, but it ideally is not going to let bits of straw or heads or other bits of debris that we don't want won't fit through the holes in the screen, and they'll go out through the tailings into one of the bags on the side there. The bottom screen is going to be smaller openings that will keep the grain that we're cleaning from falling through the screen, but let little shriveled kernels, weed seeds, etc. fall through. And then once the clean grain comes off that bottom screen, it falls through an air column that blows out any light grain or bits of straw that are about the same size of the grain. And this does a pretty good job. So once it falls through the air column, it goes up a bagging elevator, and we can bag it in the 50-pound bags. A gravity table is another machine that we have, and this allows us to separate on density. So if the grain is of a consistent size, this machine will separate on density. And the way it works is it has a steel mesh table that air comes up through. The table slopes to the front and elevates towards the one end, and it shakes back and forth on the direction of the elevation. So the grain that's real light gets stratified, it can't touch the deck, and it just comes down and falls off the deck. You can see the split beans there. the grain that can touch the deck walks up the deck. So progressively, as you go up this deck, the grain is getting denser. Another machine we have is this Carter disc separator. We use this primarily to separate out the oats that still have hulls on them from our hulless oats. But in this picture, we're using it to take cockle out of a wheat crop. So cockle is a small round seed. It could also take vetch out of wheat. It's a little bit slow, but it's a way that we can do it that we have. And it has these discs that have little pockets in. So the top one will lift our grain that we want. So like oats or wheat, it'll lift it and then it goes into the lower one. But the discs in the top won't lift longer things like oats that still have their hulls on or wheat that still has the husk around it. Those will get rejected out the end. Now on the bottom one, it has smaller pockets, so it'll lift small round seeds, but it will reject our good oats or good wheat out the end. This machine will also take out split oats or split wheat too. Another machine we use is a spelt dehuller. I actually built this machine, and the plans are available for free. So you can see on the picture on the right, and the one scoop is spelt with the hull on it, and then on the scoop on the right next to that scoop is spelt once it's been dehulled. It looks pretty much just like wheat once it's dehulled. And I use this machine with a Forsberg 2G destoner, which limits the capacity to about 250 to 400 pounds capacity per hour. The destoner will separate the dehulled spelt from the spelt that still has the hulls on it, so it makes a really nice all-in-one operation. Now, before you get too excited about growing certified organic grain for the commodity market, I need to temper your enthusiasm, because right now 2/3 of the organic grain that's being consumed in this country is being imported, and a lot of it is coming from the Ukraine, where it's being grown on former Soviet farms. And the farms in the Ukraine, they're being managed by German farm managers using a lot of German equipment. So they're very modern farms on an unimaginable scale. The one tractors that I used, Fendt tractors, they had a promotion a couple years ago where they drove a tractor from the factory to a farm in the Ukraine that bought 90 brand new tractors from Fendt every year. And the farm that they're going in the Ukraine, I'm not sure if it's representative of all the farms in the Ukraine, but that particular farm was 300,000 hectares, which is 1,157 square miles, or 34 miles to the side. That's just one farm in the Ukraine, and several of those farms are certified organic and exporting grain directly to the United States. So if you're in the Northeast, you can't compete growing commodity organic grain against something like that. So you have to try and seek local markets that are willing to pay a premium for local grain, or perhaps it's a variety that they want, something where you're going to get a premium, because you can't compete against a commodity agriculture on that scale. So there's different ways that you can market organic grain. You can sell it as feed grade grain for feed, food grade grain for wheat berries or for milling, malting grain where you'll sell it to a malting house or you'll do the malting yourself, and that's basically where they take the grain, they sprout it, they dry it, they roast it. Or you could grow organic seed. So progressively from the top to bottom, it kind of gets more difficult to meet the different requirements. And there's different quality indicators for small grain. In the Northeast, the most important one is the vomitoxin, or DAWN. This is caused by head scab in wheat, which can be caused whenever the wheat gets rained on. Whenever it's flowering is when the wheat can get infected. Now, the infestation or the quantity of the vomitoxin can increase greatly if it continues to get rained on after the wheat has reached physiological maturity. And this is a concern in wheat, spelt, rye, and barley. So for food grade, it has to be under 1 part per million. And for feeding beef, cattle, and feedlot cattle, it has to be under 10 parts per million. For all other animals, it has to be under 5 parts per million, but for high vomitoxin grains, there's a feed restriction of a 20% maximum ration for swine and a 40% maximum ration for all other animals. Another quality indicator is the falling number. This is an indication of pre-harvest sprouting. So once the grain has reached physiological maturity, every time it gets rained on, it starts to sprout a little bit more and a little bit more. And what happens is the enzymatic action inside the wheat increases greatly, and the starch conversion starts to turn from starches to sugars. And the reason this is important, that you want to have a high falling number, ideally above 300, is it doesn't, for bakers, a low falling number bread is very difficult for them to make bread with, and they prefer a higher falling number bread. So, and lastly, if you're going to sell food grade grain or even feed grade grain, it needs to be clean grain. So you have to have a way to get your straw, heads, and especially weed seeds out of your grain. So there's different value-added opportunities that you can do if you want to control your destiny a little bit more when you're growing organic grains. The easiest one would be you could mill feed for your local community or people in your region. All you need to get started in that is a grinder mixer. Fertrell sells lots of things that you can put in your ration. They even have feed recipes, and they can help you out with that. If you want to, you can do like I do and take your grain and mill it into flour and market that to your region. Or you could even start a malting house where you malt barley and other grains. Now there are a couple malting houses that have opened up or are opening up in Pennsylvania that you might also be able to sell grain to. So this is our flour mill. We imported this flour mill from Austria, and I put the grain in the hopper there, then it flows into the millstones and then through the sifter, and that's how we mill flour. Now we can change the screens in the sifter to get different products depending on what our objective is. This is our oat roller, and we imported this from Australia. It has 3x3 rolls in there. It does a really good job at rolling hulless oats. It does not roll things like wheat or spelt. We need some bigger rolls for that. I actually have a machine that's old and cast iron that I'm going to rebuild, but for now this is the machine we're using to make our rolled oats. The picture on the right, you can see the raw hulless oats in the right-hand scoop and the rolled oats in the left-hand scoop, and they look like rolled oats. Imagine that. So one of the things is, if you want to get into value-added grains or even growing grain, you need to choose the crop or crops that you want to grow. You have to decide on what region you're going to market to. Then you want to talk to other producers in your area and make sure that there's adequate demand. Also, too, they might tell you about something that they're not doing that there is a demand for, so there might be an untapped market that you could exploit. The last thing you want to do is try and do exactly what your neighbor's doing, because if there's not enough market demand, you both could go out of business. And there's a wide myriad of things that you can do in the local organic grains movement. So there's room for a lot of different things. So rather than everybody doing the same thing, there's lots of opportunity that we can do. And also, you want to find at least 2 customers to buy your grain. That's very important, because if you have a customer that goes out of business, or maybe they change suppliers, and you only have 1 customer, you can get stuck with a lot of grain that you don't know how to get rid of. And lastly, growing organic grain is expensive. So you want to make sure that you can receive adequate compensation. So we have over $400,000 worth of equipment in our organic grain operation. We've bought most of that equipment from money from other enterprises. And now some of the money that we bought the equipment with has come from organic grains. But you have to make sure that you're making enough money off your locally grown certified organic grain that you can repair and replace your equipment and also still make an adequate living. If you're selling directly to consumers, you have to make your name a brand. That is, you have to give your business a unique identity that will be remembered. Business cards and rack cards are also essential to helping you with this process. A good place to start is to have a website. Now with WordPress, this is very easy to do and also mobile friendly. This is a screen capture of our website, which has been online since 1998. This winter, we're going to transition it to a WordPress website that'll work with people with cell phones and tablets, which is very important. Facebook and other social media is also important. Our farm currently only does Facebook. Now, this gives you the opportunity to keep folks up to date with what's happening on your farm, and some farms just use Facebook without a website. I think that social media alone does not provide enough depth as having a website and a Facebook page where you can put more frequent updates about your farm. Press releases are the backbone of marketing. This slide gives you a format to submit a story, which is quite easy to do with email. Make sure you address your emails to the appropriate person and not to whom it may concern. Cultivate relationships with the press, and if you can address your email to somebody you know, that really works wonders about getting a story written about your farm. Writing a press release takes time, but we found it's more effective than any kind of paid advertising. Now, too many businesses, once they have a story written about them, they just forget it. Don't let your work go for naught. Let people know about the articles that have been written about you, and one way to do this is to have a media page on your website with links to the articles also on your website. So you want to make sure that you have the article on a page on your website, because eventually the article will get taken down on the original site. So if they can link to it, they'll always be able to read the article. And this approach has been very successful for Weatherbury Farm. The media wants to write about businesses that have been written about, and there are articles that get written about our farm that we aren't even interviewed for. So about once a month, we Google our farm name to see if anything new has been written, and if we find something, we put it on our website. You want to have an email newsletter to keep folks abreast of what's happening, and an email newsletter is a great way to do this and brand yourself and to keep your name in front of your customers and potential customers. There are a number of potential email providers, some at no cost. What we use for our farm is Constant Contact. And then on your website, you want to have an email sign up and also on your social media page. Now, for us, what we do is we have several different newsletters that we have farm vacations, grass-fed meats, certified organic grains, and folk music. People can select the email newsletter that they want to receive emails, and that way they only get emails for stuff they're interested in, and they don't get inundated with emails and then decide to unsubscribe. Now, the other thing too is if you go to any event, you want to make sure that you have an email list where people can sign up for your email newsletter. It's a great way to build a customer base. Now, when you go to events or anytime you're interacting with the public or at trade shows, you want to make sure you have clothing that has your farm name on it. And you want to present an image about your farm that looks professional. Now, during the summer, we wear clothing every single day that has our farm name on it. Also, too, if you can find local farm-to-table events in your region, that's a great way to meet customers. And you can also sell product, or you can disseminate information about your products at these shows. This is a picture we took at the Pittsburgh Farm-to-Table show, and we brought a lot of flour there. Actually, both tables originally were mostly covered with flour bags, and we had 2 bags of light rye flour left at the end of the show. Also, too, you want to hold on-farm events to get the customers to come out and actually see your farm, because when they see your farm, then you build a connection with your customers. So once a month, we have on-farm flour pickups. We have a mill tour about once a year or so, and then we have a potluck dinner once or twice a year. So, is there any questions?
Nigel, I have one if you don't mind.
Sure.
So when you're doing press releases, do you focus on putting out information that's about activities that you're doing or about growing methods and what you're doing on farm? Is there something you found to be effective at capturing media attention?
We normally target the press releases to something in particular. Like actually the last one we did is Daniel Tagger, which is a spinoff of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, came out to our farm. So we had something about that they were coming out and filming on our farm. Or maybe we might do something, about local organic flour, not just a shotgun approach, but, more of a targeted, something that they might pique their interest to write an article about.
Okay, thank you. And how do you decide with your emails? How do you decide what to talk about? Do you put together, I'll say maybe I'll describe it as a topical rotation that you use through the year, or how do you determine what to focus on?
Well, our email newsletters normally have 2 or 3 things. One will be about the flour pickup, say if it's a flour newsletter. One might be about a recipe, and then another one might be about pesticides use on wheat. So just for example, 38% of domestically produced wheat has pesticides on it according to the FDA. I know that was an article that was in one of our recent newsletters. So, we'll have something about the flour pickup, maybe a recipe, and then an article about the benefits of using our grain.
So I think that's something that would be easy to plan out in advance. If there's anyone that is concerned about how they would, do that on short notice. They see it on their calendar that they should be sending out a newsletter alert, and they haven't thought about it too much. But if they take, especially in the off season, a little bit of time and maybe map out some ideas, and then.
Yeah, we think about things that we can write about, but I will admit we probably don't write about them until we're ready to do the newsletter.
Well, right. I don't think you're alone in that. I think that's, it's hard to spend too much time in advance on some of those things in agriculture. And everything changes, you could pick an article and then by the time you're ready to go, there could be something better, or you just don't want to use that anymore. So.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then earlier in the presentation, I'd wondered, with the different, say, companion businesses, that go along with small grains and organic grains. Aside from the people that you just know in your community, do you have any recommendations for how to research what's going on, in the broader region, and how to, get in touch with folks so you can see what opportunities might be out there?
Well, you can do internet searches. One easy resource is Elizabeth Dick at Ogrin. That's OGRIN. It's Organic Growers Research Information Network. And for New York and Pennsylvania, she's working with Cornell and Penn State, and she's behind a lot of the research that's being done on local organic grains, and she knows most of the growers. She can help people get seed, because a lot of the seed that we grow, the varieties, is not something that you can just go to a local agway and buy the seed for. Yeah. So you have to do a little bit of research, and sometimes she'll buy bulk seed out of Canada or something, put a pool of people together that want warthog wheat, and then she'll buy a tractor trailer load of it out of Canada, and then get the wheat spread out to all the different people who wanted it.
It sounds like a great resource.
Mm-hmm. No, she is a real good resource for our area. You can just go online and search to find other people that are doing it. You can talk to Greg Roth at Penn State, who's doing a lot of the research, and he knows a lot of people who are growing organic grains in the state.
Okay. That's a good one. And we can put that in the notes that go along with this recorded session so people can access that easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. And then, looking at how you guys got into marketing to distilleries, breweries, etc. Can you talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about how you got into that? Were you approached? Did you approach them? How were those initial interactions?
Well, initially,
Curve?
we sell most of our grain to Wiggle Whiskey in Pittsburgh. We also sell to some other smaller distilleries locally, and the distillery market has really exploded, the craft distillery market. The problem is that as the distilleries get bigger, they get more price sensitive. Ironically, when they're small, they really don't care what the price is. But as they get bigger, they get more sensitive to the amount that they're spending for the grain. And when they can get imported grain either from the Canadian High Plains or from the Ukraine, then they try and put back pressure on you. So that's why we're focusing more and more on our value-added aspect of our business, rather than cutting back actually on the stuff that we grow to sell as raw grain to distilleries, because we cannot compete against big farms. Now, ironically, we do sell spelt at the commodity price, and we can make money at that, but that's because most of the spelt's grown in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, so we're still in the same region with the same economic factors.
That's interesting. Okay. And are there any publications, or aside from the Ogren, any publications or resources that you think people should look into, whether they're just thinking of getting into grains or already there? Anything you find useful?
Well, probably one of the best resources if you want to, well, I'm trying to think. So for a book, if you want a book, probably the best book is The Organic Grain Grower by Jack Lazor. And his name is Lazor. He's a dairy farmer and grain grower up in Vermont. And he has a really great book on growing organic grain. But the other thing I would recommend is talk to local farmers near you, like dairy farmers or somebody who's growing grain for feed. Now there is a wide world between feed grade grain and food grade grain. And if you get into growing food grade grain, you'll realize how much more attention needs to be paid to food grade grain, especially, getting a timely harvest, having clean fields. But, somebody in a region that's growing grain for a dairy, as long as they aren't like a dyed-in-the-wool no-till person, where they spray the fields and they go out, they can help you. If they're plowing some, they can help you, get an idea of what you might need to grow grain organically.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I will say, actually, I didn't say whenever I was about is plowing has a bad rap in this country, but I think that's largely because we plow wrong. You have to remember that the soil is full of microbes, and that's the difference between conventional agriculture and organic agriculture. Is conventional agriculture focuses on feeding the plants, so they put fertilizers down that are salts and stuff that'll feed the plant, whereas organic agriculture focuses on feeding the soil, which in turn feeds the plant. So anytime we are plowing the ground, we're making sure that we have manure on the ground, ideally a growing green manure crop that we're turning in, something that's going to feed the microbes in the soil. And we never fall plow and leave the soil idle all winter. We're always plowing the soil and trying to get something back there growing again as quickly as possible. And that is one difference that I've found, because if you go to Germany, like Bavaria, that's Lower Germania and Roman times, that has been plowed for over 1,600 years, and their soil there is darker than the soil here, where we've only been plowing for a little over 200 years.
Yeah.
So that's my little tirade on plowing.
Well, and that's good because, you know, I think a lot of grain producers, especially somebody that maybe is, you know, has a dairy and is looking at options because of milk prices, you know, if they're using no-till methods, right now, but they want to get into some, you know, food grain production, you know, for milling, then they have to think of some of those things and make some consideration. So that's great. It's good to think about. Well, Nigel, that's all the questions I had. Was there anything else you wanted to share?
Not that I can think of right now. I'm sure I'll think of something in half an hour.
Well, and for those that are watching or listening to this in the future, if you do have questions directly for Nigel, you can contact him through his farm website, or you can contact Capital RC&D, and we can get you in touch either with him or with the appropriate person. We're happy to do that. You know, we want to make sure that these resources are available to those whether participating live or you know, a year or two down the road. So with that, Nigel, thank you very much for taking time out. It's right now it's December and coming out of a busy season, I'm sure. So we appreciate it, and we hope that anyone listening, you know, has taken away good information from the webinar, and keep an eye for future events.
Okay, thank you very much. You have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Nigel. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.